It does not bear thinking about. And why Mr. Edwards at that point did not ring the police immediately when he was sent that image, I will never know. It's what any decent person would and should have done.
Once the trusted face of the BBC, Huw Edwards' descent into disgrace is nearly complete. He now faces jail, the possibility of jail after admitting receiving images of children being sexually abused. He was originally taken off air just over a year ago after a report by The Sun newspaper, and the editor of The Sun, Victoria Newton, is with us in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, I think it's worth reminding ourselves of the timeline because The Sun's very concerning story was first published a little more than a year ago. Just remind us, because these two things are unrelated, but they're still very important. Remind us what you discovered and how it played out.
So we had been getting information about Huw as far back as 2018. And we took each story on a case-by-case basis and decided whether there was enough public interest to warrant publishing it. The one we did publishing had so much public interest, and we felt we had a moral duty to publish it. So the story was about concerned parents that came to us. They'd gone to the BBC to complain that their child was receiving money, thousands and thousands of pounds, which the child was using and spending on drugs. It was a very vulnerable child, in exchange for explicit photos, and they needed it to stop. They'd been to the BBC HQ, nothing was done. They repeatedly contacted them, nothing happened. They'd gone to the police, nothing could be helped there. They were just a desperate working class family in need of help, and they came to us.
And remind us what happened there, because Huw Edwards was eventually named by his wife, and then there was some talk about a mental health episode. And then the story kind of closed down at that point.
Yes, it was when we first ran the story, we didn't name him for various legal reasons. We made that decision not to. We were being very, very careful not to identify the child in any shape or form in terms of geography, etc. And we didn't name him. But then he was suspended quite quickly by the BBC, and because other BBC presenters were worrying that they were being wrongly accused of being the person at the centre of this, Huw's wife then came out and revealed that it was him and put out a statement saying he was suffering from mental health issues. So that basically shut down all the stories. So we weren't then able to publish all the evidence that we had about his behaviour.
Now, as you said, there was a fair amount of closing ranks around Huw Edwards at the time, people saying your story wasn't fair, etc. But it is now clear that you were onto something very serious. And this is something that happened separately. There was a man, a 26-year-old man, who was arrested. They looked at his phone, they found his conversation, which is where we are today. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, is going to speak to the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie. What should she be asking him and telling him? Because some people are saying, well, OK, maybe the BBC were informed in November that he had been arrested, but it's innocent until proven guilty.
Of course it is innocent until proven guilty. I think what many of the BBC's own staff are finding so distasteful today is that the BBC's high command knew the precise nature of the things that he was arrested for. And we're talking category A pictures here, the most serious images of child abuse. And as it turns out, is a boy aged 7 to 9. I cannot bear thinking about that. And what was he thinking? And the fact that the BBC still decided it was OK to keep paying him with a public lice funder paid cash. I think the public are angry about that, and I'm sure that's what she'll be asking him today.
Yeah.
Look, the BBC will have many highly paid HR managers, I'm sure, would have been advising Tim Davie, oh, you might have problems legally here. But I personally think that it's a question of judgment. And
one other thing remarking on, there's a lot of it's very comprehensive coverage, and there's lots of different aspects in the coverage in The Sun today. But you have Sarah Payne, who's written a piece. Her daughter, of course, Sarah Payne, was murdered. She's written about
by a paedophile.
What we call indecent images. But she says, obviously they're more than images. These are children.
Well, you think about it, that what came out in court yesterday with Huw's charges was that this is a moving video of a young boy aged between 7 or 9 and must have been performing some kind of sexual act. It does not bear thinking about. And why Mr. Edwards at that point did not ring the police immediately when he was sent that image, I will never know. It's what any decent person would and should have done.
But there were 41, I think, altogether illegal images.
That's right. And that's just the tranche that they found.
There's a piece in the Times, Victoria, Predator Ruthless with Use of Status. This is by Scarlett Howes. And it's an absolutely fascinating piece because it talks very much about the culture within the BBC.
It was in the Sun today. Scarlett's my reporter.
Absolutely,
she wrote the story
with the big star kind of factor, which is that people like Huw Edwards are very much indulged. There's loads of stuff coming to you from people who have worked with him, saying this was going on, that was going on. You referred to that earlier. Are you still receiving those kind of stories?
Yes. Well, obviously, when we broke the first story, our phones were ringing off the hook, and Scarlett was contacted by loads of people, some who worked at the BBC, some who were just fans who'd contacted him and then got really inappropriate messages. We actually compiled a big dossier, which we handed over to the BBC at the time. Again, as I said, we couldn't publish it because of his mental health issues, so we respected that. And some of those people have been back onto us again now, and clearly we know that the BBC have their own dossier of evidence of his predatory behaviour within the BBC, so it'd be interesting to see whether at some point they're under pressure to release that or not.
And are you going to make sure that they do something about those individuals within the BBC who feel that they were, that they were harassed, I suppose is the right word?
Well, it's very interesting. The Sunday Times had a good scoop on Sunday, which revealed the BBC have put out a whole new load of workplace guidelines now, clearly on the back of Huw's behaviour, and it's about harassment and how most senior employees should not be harassing junior colleagues, because that's what he was doing.
Yes, absolutely. Victoria, thank you very much for talking to us. That is Victoria Newton. She is the editor of The Sun.
The BBC, Mr. Edwards. Any comment whatsoever? This must be a journalist. You've got no comments at all.
What do you have to say?
Would it not be appropriate to apologise at this point? Why are you not apologising?
Mr. Edwards, will you repent?
Off the road. I wish so, this car's gone flat. Move back, please, move back.
Come on.
Keep moving, please, keep moving.
Move back, please. Come on. Come on, move backwards, please.
Can you turn around?
Backwards. Come on, guys. We need backwards.
Keep moving, Mr. Edwards. Keep moving,
Come on,
everyone.
I don't know.
Any comment? Do you have anything to say, Mr. Edwards?
Right, come on, backwards, backwards. No, he's right there.
Stop the paedophile with the BBC. Any comment, Mr. Edwards?
Turn around. You draw the public order up with this accused.
Any comment whatsoever?
What do you have to say? Pleaded guilty on 3 counts.
Appropriate to apologise.
Make way! Stop pushing!
Why are you not apologising?
Stop pushing!
Mr. Edwards, will you say sorry?
Are you right, sorry? Excuse me. Are you right? Sorry.
Off the road, please. Off the road. Off the road. Off the road, please. Off the road. Off the road. Run off the road.